Today, in 2023, China is still the world's second largest Bitcoin miner, and nobody has talked about the fact that only 3 months after the Bitcoin ban in 2021, 20% of the global Bitcoin hash rate mysteriously popped up back online in the borders of China, indicating that the CCP failed on their nation state level attack on Bitcoin, or it suggests something very interesting about the CCP and their Bitcoin strategy, which really makes us ask the question, could China's recent Bitcoin backflip be a sign that they've come up with a different plan to bring down the US dollar? I know it sounds a little bit out there and a little bit crazy, but some of the other headlines we're going to hit on in today's video is going to give that claim a little bit more validity, okay? We all know that the BRICS countries, led by China, are actively trying to de-dollarize their economy as we speak today in 2023. They announced they're going to create a new reserve currency in 2022. We did a video on that just last week covering this topic in detail. But is China really trying to use Bitcoin as a potential transactional currency around the world? Let's dive into this one. So starting off with Hong Kong. This headline came out of Bloomberg just earlier this week, and it reads, Hong Kong's crypto hub ambitions win the quiet backing from Beijing. No, you read that correctly. Chinese officials have actually been spotted at many of these Hong Kong Bitcoin and crypto events, and they've apparently been interacting with the organizers of the events on a very regular basis. And guess what? From all reports, the Chinese are okay with what Hong Kong is doing because they recently announced that they want to become a crypto hub. That is their own words. I think they should be focusing on Bitcoin personally, but that's what Hong Kong said. They're legalizing trading for retail traders and they're trying to put more regulations in place. And it's very interesting that they've been allowed to do this because, of course, they're actually not an independent country. They're kind of controlled by China. We all saw the videos of China aggressively moving into Hong Kong in 2020 and just saying, look, that's it. No more British rule for Hong Kong. We control Hong Kong now. That's what the Chinese did, and they did it in a pretty brutal and violent fashion. So let's move on from Hong Kong and have a look at something else that's very interesting that has recently caught my attention, and that is the fact China has more Bitcoin than any other country around the world. No, you heard that correctly. What we can see from this snazzy little website, if I do say so myself, that China actually holds 194,000 Bitcoin. That is nearly 1% of the total Bitcoin supply. And you can see the other countries here that own a lot of Bitcoin. The Ukrainian government holds somewhere around 46,000 Bitcoin. And obviously El Salvador there holds 2,500-ish Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So very interesting that China actually holds all of that Bitcoin. Something else on this website that also caught my attention was looking at the private companies that own Bitcoin. And we can see there the second largest company who holds 140,000 Bitcoin, Block One, is actually listed as being in Hong Kong. Very interesting little tidbit there, but let's move on to another country in Asia that recently got busted buying Bitcoin. No, you heard that correctly. There is a country called the Kingdom of Bhutan that recently got busted and outed for secretly buying hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin using their $3 billion sovereign wealth fund. And if you are enjoying this kind of research, make sure you check out the full Substack article that is linked down below, breaking down this topic in more detail, because there is only so many charts and statistics I can cram in one 10-minute YouTube video. Now, before we close this thing out, I also wanted to quickly interrupt today's video and let you guys know about our amazing Bitcoin only show sponsors. If you're a high net worth individual looking to buy more than $10,000 of Bitcoin, I would love to point you towards my newest YouTube show sponsor, who of course is Bitcoin Reserve. They're a great Bitcoin only company and they're going to help you buy Bitcoin with the lowest fees, fastest settlement, and do it all in a privacy preserving way. Now, the BitBox02 Hardware Wallet is a great Bitcoin only hardware wallet that focuses on security. It's the easiest wallet I've ever used, and you can get started in under 5 minutes. So I highly recommend you grab one of those puppies. You can use a promo code Bitcoin Made Simple and you get 5% off that puppy. Amber, guys, they're giving you $10 of free Bitcoin if you sign up using the Amber exchange. Super easy to use. We just rolled out 62 countries. So I want to quickly take a look at this really interesting Forbes article breaking down the situation in Bhutan, okay? The first quote I want to highlight is up the top here. We can see that the Himalayan kingdom has been quietly dumping millions of dollars into Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And the only reason we found out this information was because they were publicly disclosed when the bankruptcy filings of BlockFi and Celsius came out. Taking a look here, we can see that Druck withdrew more than $65 million of Bitcoin and deposited nearly $18 million of digital assets over on Celsius before they were bankrupt. So that implies that Druck is currently holding more than $40 million of Bitcoin. But of course, they haven't said anything publicly, and they also were a customer over at BlockFi. So we can see here the Druck actually defaulted on a $30 million loan from BlockFi. So we can see here that Druck actually borrowed $30 million of USDC coin, which is, of course, that US dollar peg stable coin. But BlockFi alleges that Druck failed to pay back the loan, and they actually, BlockFi went on to liquidate nearly 2,000 Bitcoin that was held as collateral. At the time, that was worth around $76.5 million at the time of Druck defaulting on that loan. So very interesting scenes in Bhutan, which is a little island near China. Bhutan is simply taking advantage of the beautiful things that Bitcoin can do for your finances, okay? They're buying it anonymously, and nobody would ever knew that they own that Bitcoin if they didn't buy it from a KYC exchange like BlockFi or Celsius, who later went bankrupt and had to release all of their documents, okay? But moving on, let's take a look at another very interesting piece of Bitcoin news in Asia that I believe is a suggestion that China could be looking to make a move into Bitcoin. And this comes out of Indonesia, okay? So Indonesia has a population of around 250 million people. So that obviously dwarfs the tiny population of Bhutan, who only has a population of around 770,000 people. But the reason I'm interested in Indonesia is because one of their finance ministers is actually speaking at the Bitcoin conference in only 1 month's time. Yes, you heard that one correctly. We can see here on the speaker page of Bitcoin Magazine, they have their headline guests up the top with their big images, okay? The smaller speakers have like smaller images, I suppose. I think this is how they've structured it. But we can see here with the big image, Ridwan Kamil is the governor of the Indonesian government, okay? So it really makes you ask the question, what is he going to talk about? Or is he going to make an announcement at the Bitcoin conference? Because we all know when El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender, Nayib Bukele gave that announcement and broke the news at the Bitcoin Miami conference in 2021. And then in 2022, we had similar news headlines come out when Portugal, Madeira, and Honduras made Bitcoin legal tender. All of those announcements were made at 2022 Bitcoin Miami. Samson Mao was the one who introduced those announcements on stage. I was actually lucky enough to check out that one live, but it really makes you wonder, what is he going to talk about? Because if he potentially has something really bullish about Bitcoin to say and makes Bitcoin legal tender for Indonesia, well, we're now talking about some pretty big nation states making Bitcoin legal tender, okay? 60 million people? That is nothing to sneeze at, and it's much bigger than El Salvador, who has a population of only, say, 5 to 6 million people. You guys starting to see what I'm seeing, or am I just a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist? I think there's lots of dots that seem to be aligning that are coming out of Asia. We have Singapore. We have rumors of all this Bitcoin hash rate coming back online in China. We have Hong Kong coming out and making Bitcoin property. And this is after we have seen these Chinese officials being spotted at crypto events in Hong Kong, all but saying, yep, we're okay with this. And there's so many more data points as well. But there is one more domino we haven't talked about today, and that is the ex-Chinese central banker coming out recently saying, guess what? I think China might have made a mistake. And this is big because in China, if you're part of the government or part of a central bank-like institution in China, it is very rare for you to actually come out and say, look, I think my crazy communist government is making a mistake. Typically, that doesn't go down too well for the people in China doing that. So we can see here from this article, Huyong Yiping was a former member of the People's Bank of China from 2015 to 2018, and he was also a managing director and chief Asian economist at Citigroup from 2000 to 2009. And he came out and he said, look, China might need to modify its regulations on cryptocurrencies to ensure it doesn't miss out on technological developments in digital assets. And he also said it is not clear whether China's ban on cryptocurrency transactions is sustainable in the longer term, because it may lead to them missing out on many opportunities in the space. So again, these are huge comments coming from someone who used to work at a Chinese central bank. Okay, China never admits they were wrong. Now let's get into the conclusions and the takeaways for this video. So is China somehow trying to welcome Bitcoin into Asia to then somehow use Bitcoin to get around the US dollar petrodollar system? Nobody knows, the same way that nobody knew that Bhutan was secretly buying tens of millions of dollars of Bitcoin, while in public, they were coming out and they were saying, look, we're actually building a CBDC pilot over on Ripple. Okay, we can see from this headline here, Bhutan to pilot retail CBDC with XRP backers Ripple. And this was in August 2022. So again, it's very interesting what Bhutan was doing in private, stacking Bitcoin, tens of millions of dollars of Bitcoin, but in public they were saying, yeah, we're making a CBDC on Ripple. Really interesting, and that can lead you down all sorts of different rabbit holes. But it's just, I don't know what's going on with the United States. They're attacking Bitcoin. We have Operation Choke Point 2.0, and this is driving capital offshore into China and Hong Kong. We can see here from this headline that Republican Representative Tom Emmer recently accused the SEC chair of pushing American firms into the hands of China's Communist Party, okay? And we can see here, just highlighting what Tom Emmer's means, is we're seeing this capital flight out of the United States. So I've just nested myself in between the chart of all the stable coins around the world. So we can see here that the total market capitalization is around $130 billion, and that's cool, that's interesting. But what's really interesting is what has happened recently with USDC and Tether, okay? So Tether is actually the line at the very top of this video, and we can see that is the blue one. And that right now is reaching all-time highs in terms of market capitalization at the same time that USDC is sinking like a rock. So what that means is capital is flying out of USDC and actually going into stable coins like Tether. So we can see here that USDC's market cap was around 55 billion in July 2022. Today, USDC is only worth $31 billion, indicating 25 billion has flowed out of the US-centric stablecoin and into an offshore US dollar, more like an offshore euro dollar equivalent, being Tether. Almost as if Joe Biden and a few of the other Democrats in the US are actively trying to help the BRICS countries, as well as the other dozen or so countries wanted to become a part of the BRICS, in their plans to find something to use outside of the US dollar, okay? Everybody's talking about the de-dollarization, and the US attacking Bitcoin and stablecoins and pushing that offshore just pushes all of that economic activity into the hands of our adversaries. So is this potential Bitcoin backflip from China a sign that they are actually coming up with a Bitcoin plan in the future to help them de-dollarize their economy? I don't know, but I would like to ask my amazing subscribers over here on YouTube, what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want to learn more about this BRICS de-dollarization, check out the other videos I'm going to slap up on screen right now. And with all that said, I'll see you on the next one.